Hey, welcome to the Christ Revealed YouTube channel. I got a great interview coming up for you. Really great to be here with you. Enjoy this interview. Jay Warner, thanks so much for coming and sitting with us, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Can you give us a bio sketch on you?
Well, I was somebody who never thought I would be sitting and talking to you about things related to Jesus. I was raised up in a place where I didn't really know many Christians, and I wasn't in a Christian family. So I came to this late. I was probably about 35. Mm-hmm. At that time, I was already kind of working as an investigator. I was doing a lot of robbery and a couple of murders we were working at the time. I was working in an undercover team. Mm-hmm. And my wife was somebody who was more interested in church and the things of church, not really knowing what Christianity proposed or what was true or not true, but she kind of felt like, hey, we're raising our kids, and don't you think we should bring them to church? Isn't that what you do when you raise your kids? And I thought, yeah, I'm happy to go, just not going to go as a believer. Mm-hmm. My dad is still in that position today. He would be happy to go, but is not going to go as a believer. And so my first step into a church was really just to make Susie happy, and I was more than happy to do that. But the pastor was creative enough to throw Jesus in a way that I could catch him. He said a lot of things that day, but the thing that stands out was that he described Jesus as kind of the foundation for Western civilization, the smartest man who ever lived, all these profound statements and teachings of Jesus, kind of countercultural teaching at the time, counterintuitive even today, all these things that provoked me to want to know, well, what did he say? Because you're not going to get all that in one sermon. Right. So I said, this, you kind of got me interested, and I didn't know where to even look. So I went out and I bought a New Testament, I bought a Bible. I didn't spend a lot of money on it. I didn't really think I would go very far with it. I really was thinking that the wisdom teaching of Jesus might just be a series of proverbs, like fortune cookie Jesus. Right. That's kind of what I was expecting. And it didn't work out that way. I saw that these were couched in the Gospels, these accounts that someone appears to want me to believe actually occurred. They're historical narratives, at least that's the way they're being pitched. And so I started thinking, okay, so is this all a kind of a fictional, mythological narrative that teaches a good story? Is it really the remnants of an eyewitness account? Is it truly an eyewitness account from the first century? I just needed to know before I could assess this. And I really wasn't trying to disprove it. My goal was I didn't think it was worth even proving. I thought it was so absurd, patently absurd, that this miracle worker who rose from the dead was. So I didn't even think of it aggressively. Right. I just thought it was blatantly and obviously false. So, but when I started to read the Gospels, by this time in my career, I was already working cases where I had several eyewitnesses who would make a claim about something in the past, say 30, 35 years ago. And I really finished my career doing nothing but cold case homicides. And that skill set teaches you things. And one of the things it'll teach you is how to assess eyewitnesses. Is this really an eyewitness account? Can I really trust this as an eyewitness account? And what about the statement is reliable or not reliable? What are the techniques we use to determine if something is reliable? And I thought, well, this is a good opportunity to test and use the skill set that I had, right? And they're off to the races. As a matter of fact, I think within about 6 months of really tearing through, I still have that first Bible. It was like a forensic statement analysis is what I was using. It's a process we use, right? And determined. I thought, I told Susie, as much as I hate to admit it, this feels and has the texture of reliable eyewitness accounts. And so, what do we do? What if this crazy idea, this crazy story, right, is actually true? And I'm measuring this in every way that I knew to measure it, and I was becoming comfortable with the reliable nature of the accounts. And then you're stuck with this guy who rose from the grave. So I had to make a decision.
Yeah. So basically, you had many years, I guess, of experience in police work, and at this point in your life, you're a detective, and you're working cases, and like you said, cold cases. So that means they're somewhat historic. Yes. Maybe not a couple thousand years historic, right. But they're...
Well, here's how that's going to unwraps. I mean, if you think about the nature of my cases, I get a case where someone is interviewed 30 years ago about what they said they saw. Right. That person sometimes will pass away before I can even get to the case. Right. Well, so you can go to the detective, right? Well, he's written a report, but guess what? Sometimes those detectives have also passed away. There's a good chance they were even older than the witness they were interviewing. So now I'm stuck with the report. of something that occurred in the past, according to some eyewitness,
Right.
and I don't have access to the eyewitness or to the report writer.
Right.
Well, what am I looking at in the Gospels? I've got an account of something that allegedly happened in the distant past. I have no access to the alleged eyewitness or the report writer. So I'm really, it's the same process, it's the same skill set you're going to apply. And that's where I found myself. And I really didn't think of it that way. I didn't think of it, wow, I'm in a unique position to be, I just thought, well, how else would you assess this? I mean, how would anyone know if this is true? And I only knew one way to do it. And so that's how I approached it.
So you seem to have taken, at least in one aspect, a special interest in the resurrection.
Right.
And really digging in deep
That's right.
there. And so with that, can you walk us through the actual process you went through?
Right.
And sort of give us the little bit of the narrative, the personal narrative, as far as psychologically what's going on, because you said you approached this in the beginning as thinking this is an absurd thing.
Right.
Now you got my curiosity, I got some interest here, and I have a particular set of skills, and why shouldn't I apply them here if I'm applying them out in the rest of the world with what I do?
Yeah, this is the centerpiece, I think. The entire philosophical, historical system, the claims themselves hinge on whether or not Jesus rose from the dead. I mean, I didn't even get to the point where I was reading Paul's letters to hear him say something similar in 1 Corinthians, but I knew just from my own perspective, it's all going to come down to this. Because if you're an ancient wise sage, and by the time I read the Gospels, I had read other ancient wise sages,
right.
but none of them made a claim to die and come back from the grave. So this puts Jesus in a separate category, and I knew that was going to be a deal killer for me, probably,
right.
because I was a philosophical naturalist. There was no way I was going to accept something this supernatural. So I had to approach it in two ways. Number one, what is it that we would typically say verifies that an account is reliable? And typically that's built on a number of questions that we would allow jurors on a criminal trial to think about when they're assessing eyewitnesses on the stand. We actually have jury instructions that will help jurors assess the reliability of eyewitnesses. But they are, there's a bunch of them, about 13, 14 different instructions and questions they could ask. They all come down to four broad categories. Number one, was the person who's making this claim really there to see what it is they said they saw? Because someone could lie.
Right.
If you discover he's not even there on that day, that witness is going to be off the table. Two, is there a way that we could corroborate or verify, knowing that we're not going to have necessarily a recording, we're not necessarily going to have a video of every account, but if he says he leaned over the counter to do the robbery, and that's what you're telling me, and then I find his palm print on the counter, well, that one little piece will help corroborate your story, even though it says nothing about all the other things you described. What did he say? Was he holding a gun? That palm print's not going to tell me that, but we know that one little piece will corroborate the eyewitness account. So I'm looking for those kinds of things. Three, we're looking to see, well, has he changed his story? I mean, is he honest and accurate? And has he been honest and accurate over time? Anyone who's changing their story over time is probably not telling you the truth.
So consistency.
Yeah, consistency. And then finally, bias. We're looking for, hey, what is it would motivate this guy to lie to me? Now, if you find a guy who's got bias, good reason to lie, motive to lie to you, it doesn't mean he is necessarily lying to you. So it really isn't, it's a cumulative case. You build it this way. And so as I looked at those four areas, with the Gospels, I realized that, man, in every way you could test an eyewitness account, and in every way that I had tested eyewitness accounts, these seem to pass the test. But here's the problem. They include miraculous events.
Right.
And that's where I, for the most part, was, I would have said, okay, there's some truth in this, and there's some fiction. And so it really was a matter of my asking myself, well, why would I separate these two categories? Why do I think that this event could never have happened? He didn't feed 5,000. He didn't walk on water. I mean, come on. He might have been on the boat, but that part is not true. Well, why am I saying that? Well, because I reject out of hand, to begin with, I had a presuppositional bias against anything miraculous. So at some point, what got me over the hump was having to test my biases. Why do I believe there's no way? Why do I believe that everything that in the universe I can account for with just the stuff of the universe? I would have said, hey, if you can't get it with space, time, matter, physics, and chemistry, you can't get it. So these events, there's no way that could have happened, because this would require something supra or extra natural to occur, and I just denied the existence of those kinds of things. So I had to eventually address that issue.
That's it for this particular interview. Thanks for joining me. Really excited to take this ongoing journey with you as we keep bringing more content. If you haven't already, you really should subscribe to this channel. There's a lot of phenomenal content coming down the road into the future that you'll want to know about. Leave a comment down here. I think people would love to hear from you, and then you can hear from them too. If you liked it, go ahead and give a like. It only takes half a second, and share this with people that you care about. The world needs more light in it right now. So thanks for being with me. Hope to connect with you again soon.